My husband died in a plane crash 5 years ago. I buried an empty casket because there was nothing left of him to find. I spent my entire life savings paying off his secret gambling debts to protect his memory. I have spent every month since his funeral sending $3,000 to his grieving parents because they were too broken to work. So you can imagine my absolute shock when I looked out the window of a cafe in London and saw him walking down the street. He was not dead. He was not a memory. He was wearing a bespoke suit, holding hands with a pregnant woman and carrying a toddler on his shoulders. I am Sarah Jenkins, 32 years old, and this is the story of how my dead husband destroyed my life twice and how I made him pay for it. Before I tell you what happened next, please like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most. I was in London to close the biggest deal of my career. As a luxury real estate agent based in New York, finding a buyer for a £10 million Kensington townhouse was the break I desperately needed. My client, a Saudi oil magnate, was sitting across from me, stirring his tea, but I could no longer hear a word he was saying. My entire world had narrowed down to the sidewalk outside the glass window. It was him. It was David. My brain tried to reject what my eyes were seeing. It tried to tell me I was hallucinating from jet lag and grief. But I knew the way he walked. I knew that slight dip in his left shoulder from an old football injury. I knew the way he reached up to adjust his collar when he was feeling confident. And then he turned his head, and I saw it. The faint, jagged white scar on his chin. The one he got from falling off a bike when he was 10. I had traced that scar with my fingertips 1,000 times in the dark. I had kissed that scar before he boarded that private plane 5 years ago. David was laughing. It was a full, rich sound that vibrated through the glass and hit me like a physical blow. He looked healthier than he had ever looked when he was with me. His skin was tanned, his hair was perfectly styled, and he was looking up at the little blonde girl on his shoulders with a look of pure adoration, a look he had never given me. "Excuse me," I choked out. I did not wait for my client to respond. I did not care about the £10 million or my commission or my professional reputation. I pushed back my chair so hard it toppled over with a loud crash. My coffee cup shattered on the floor, splashing hot liquid onto my legs, but I did not feel the burn. I scrambled for the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I burst out onto the busy Kensington street. The cold London air hit my face, but I was sweating. I looked left, then right, searching frantically for the gray coat I had just seen. There. About 50 yards ahead, turning the corner toward the park. "David," I screamed. My voice was swallowed by the roar of a passing double-decker bus. He did not hear me. He kept walking, his hand resting possessively on the lower back of the woman beside him. She was tall, elegant, and heavily pregnant. She looked like old money. She looked like everything I was not. I started running. My heels clicked frantically against the pavement. Pedestrians glared at me as I shoved past them, but I did not stop. As I ran, memories of the last 5 years assaulted me. I remembered the knock on the door at 2 a.m, the 2 police officers with somber faces holding his wallet, the only thing that had survived the crash. I remembered the funeral where his mother Martha threw herself onto the empty coffin, wailing that she could not live without her son. I remembered the lawyer coming to me a week later with the truth. David had debts, Mrs. Miller. Significant gambling debts. Sharks. I had been 27 years old and grieving. I wanted to protect his name. I wanted to save his parents from the shame. So I sold our dream home. I used every penny of the $500,000 life insurance policy. I drained my own savings. I paid off criminals to clear the name of a dead man. And it did not end there. His parents, Martha and George, told me they were too traumatized to work. They said they were losing their home. Out of guilt and a misplaced sense of duty, I stepped in. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Queens so I could afford to pay the rent on their 3-bedroom house in New Jersey. I sent them $3,000 every single month. I worked 60-hour weeks showing penthouses to billionaires while I ate instant noodles for dinner, just to make sure David's family was taken care of. I was their cash cow. The dutiful widow, the fool. I turned the corner into a quiet, tree-lined street. They were ahead of me, walking slower now. I stayed back, pressing myself against a brick wall, trying to catch my breath. I needed to be sure. I needed to be 100% certain before I destroyed my own sanity. They turned into a private garden square. The gate was open. I slipped in behind them, hiding behind a large oak tree. I watched as David lifted the little girl off his shoulders. She was a beautiful child with golden curls in his nose. He spun her around and she shrieked with delight. "Higher, Daddy, higher," she yelled. "Daddy!" The word ripped through me. We had tried for 2 years to have a baby. He told me it was my fault. He told me I was too stressed, too focused on my career. He made me feel broken. But here he was playing the perfect father to a child who looked exactly like him. "Be careful, darling," the woman said. Her voice was British, polished, and soft. "Do not get her too excited before her nap." David set the girl down and pulled the woman into his arms. He kissed her. It was not a quick peck. It was deep and lingering. He placed his hand on her swollen stomach and whispered something that made her laugh. I felt bile rise in my throat. This was the man who had supposedly died, leaving me with nothing but debt and a grieving family to support. This was the man whose mother called me every week crying about how much she missed her baby boy while asking if the transfer had gone through yet. They were all in on it. They had to be. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened the camera app and zoomed in. I needed proof. I needed his face clear as day. I recorded him picking up a discarded toy. I recorded him wiping the little girl's face. I recorded the way the sunlight hit that scar on his chin. "Sophie, come here, please," David called out. Sophie. He had named his daughter Sophie. That was the name we had picked out. That was the name we had written in a notebook the night we bought our house. The cruelty of it made me gasp. It was a small sound, but in the quiet garden it was loud enough. David froze. He went completely still, his back stiffening. He slowly turned his head, scanning the park. His eyes moved over the benches, the flower beds, and then they locked onto the oak tree where I was standing. I stepped out from behind the trunk. I did not say a word. I just stood there holding my phone up, recording him. Our eyes met across the grass. I expected to see shock. I expected to see confusion. I expected him to look like a man seeing a ghost. But I did not see any of that. I saw fear, absolute primal fear. He knew. He recognized me instantly. There was no hesitation, no moment of wondering if I was a stranger. He knew exactly who I was, and he knew exactly what my presence meant. His face drained of color. He looked at me, then he looked at his pregnant wife, then back at me. "David, what is it?" the woman asked, touching his arm. "You look like you have seen a ghost." He did not answer her. He grabbed the little girl's hand and pulled his wife toward the exit on the far side of the garden. "We have to go," he said, his voice sharp and panicked. "Now!" "David, you are hurting me," the woman protested, but he did not stop. He dragged them away, looking back over his shoulder at me one last time. The message in his eyes was clear. He was not coming back from the dead to explain. He was running. Again. I stood alone in the center of the beautiful London garden, watching my dead husband flee the scene of his new life. My phone was still recording, capturing his retreat. I lowered the camera. The shock was beginning to fade, replaced by a cold, hard rage that started in my chest and spread to my fingertips. He thought he could run. He thought he could fake his death, leave me with his debts, use me to support his parents, and then play house in London with a new family. He was wrong. I looked at the video on my screen. I pressed save. I was not going to cry. I was not going to collapse. I had spent 5 years mourning a ghost. I had spent 5 years sacrificing my own happiness for a lie. I pulled up my banking app. The automatic transfer of $3,000 to Martha and George was scheduled for tomorrow. I canceled it. Then I opened my contacts and found the number for Marcus, my brother-in-law. He was married to David's sister Emily, and he was the only person in that family who had ever treated me with genuine kindness. He was also a cybersecurity expert. I dialed his number. "Pick up Marcus," I whispered, watching the empty gate where David had disappeared. "Pick up. Sarah." He answered on the second ring. "Is everything okay? You are in London, right?" "I found him." "Marcus," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Found who?" "David. He is alive, Marcus. He is alive, he has a new wife, and I have him on video." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Do not move, Marcus said finally. Send me the video. I am going to find out everything. I hung up the phone. The wind picked up, blowing leaves across the manicured grass. I took a deep breath. The grieving widow was dead. The woman who walked out of that park was someone entirely different, and she was going to burn their entire world to the ground. I stood on the corner of Kensington High Street, my phone pressed against my ear so hard it hurt. My other hand was gripping my chest, trying to force air into my lungs. The video file was saved. The evidence was real. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to hear his mother explain why her dead son was walking around London in a $3,000 suit. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? Martha's voice was groggy. It was early morning in New Jersey. She sounded normal. She sounded like a woman waking up in a warm bed, a bed I paid for in a house I paid for. Martha, I gasped. I saw him. Saw who? Sarah. You are calling very early. David. I saw David. He is alive, Martha. He is here in London. I waited for the scream. I waited for the shock, the denial, the hope. I waited for a mother to demand details, to weep with joy that her only son was not actually a pile of ash in a casket. Instead, I heard a long, heavy sigh. It was the sound of a parent dealing with a toddler who had spilled juice on the carpet. Sarah, honey, Martha said, her voice dripping with a sickly, sweet pity. We talked about this. Remember what Dr. Evans told you. You need to take your medication. You have been working too hard again, Haven, not you. I gripped the phone tighter. This was not hallucination. This was not stress. I am not crazy, Martha. I was just 10 feet away from him. He has a scar on his chin. He was with a woman and a child. He looked right at me. Stop it, Sarah. Martha snapped, her tone shifting from pity to irritation. Just stop it. You are hurting us. Every time you have one of these episodes, you rip the wound open again. We buried him, Sarah. We buried the only part of him the crash left behind. Do you remember the casket? Do you remember the funeral? She was doing it again, twisting reality, making me doubt my own eyes. For 5 years, whenever I questioned the debt or the finances, she would play the grief card. She would remind me of the charred remains, the closed casket, the horror of it all, until I felt guilty for even breathing. But today, I had something I never had before. I am sending you a video, Martha, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I am sending it right now. Look at your phone. I pulled the phone away from my ear and hit send on the message. The little blue bar slid across the screen. Delivered. I put the phone back to my ear. Silence. Absolute heavy silence. I knew she was watching it. I could picture her sitting up in her bed in New Jersey, putting on her reading glasses, staring at the screen. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 10. She had to see it. She had to see her son. There was no denying the way he walked, the way he smiled. It was David. It was undeniably David. Martha, I said, tell me that is not him. Tell me that is not your son. The silence stretched for another 5 seconds. Then I heard a rustle of sheets and a cough. It looks like him, I will give you that, Martha said. Her voice was flat, completely devoid of emotion. But it is just a look-alike, Sarah. Everyone has a double somewhere. You are chasing ghosts and you are embarrassing yourself. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. She was denying it. Even with the video right in front of her face, she was denying it. How can you say that I screamed, drawing stares from people walking past me on the sidewalk? That is David. He recognized me, Martha. He ran away because he saw me. He ran away because a crazy woman was filming his family. Martha corrected. You need to come home, Sarah. You need to see your doctor. You are spiraling. And honestly, it is becoming exhausted for George and me. We are old people. We cannot handle your drama. My drama. I paid for her food. I paid for her heat. I paid for the roof over her head, and she called my trauma drama. I am not spiraling, I hissed. I am going to the police. Do not you dare. Martha's voice dropped an octave, deadly serious. You leave the police out of this. They closed the case 5 years ago. You will only make a fool of yourself and dishonor David's memory. Just come home. She paused, and then she said the thing that shattered the last remnant of my respect for her. And Sarah, while I have you on the phone, George was checking the account this morning. The rent transfer for this month has not cleared yet. The landlord is calling. You know how anxious your father gets about money." I stood frozen on the London street. I had just told her that her dead son was alive. I had sent her video proof, and her response was to ask for the rent money. She did not care. She did not care that David was alive because she already knew. She knew he was alive. She knew he was in London, and she knew exactly what she was doing when she asked me for that check. They were not grieving parents. They were parasites. I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the contact name, Martha Miller Mom. I had saved it that way 5 years ago when I promised to take care of them. "You want your money, Martha?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "We need it, Sarah. We rely on you. You promised David." "I promised David I would take care of his family," I said. "And I guess I have been doing that. Just not the family I thought." I did not say goodbye. I did not scream. I simply pressed the red button and ended the call. I booked the first flight out of Heathrow. I left my luggage in the hotel room. I left the deal on the table. None of it mattered. The only thing that existed was the video on my phone and the lie I had been living for 5 years. The flight took 7 hours, but it felt like 7 years. I stared at the seat back in front of me, replaying Martha's voice in my head. "It is just a look-alike Sarah." No, it was not. A mother knows her son, but a wife knows her husband. I knew the way he looked at me in that park. That was not the look of a stranger. That was the look of a man who got caught. When I landed at JFK, I did not go to my apartment. I did not go to New Jersey to scream at Martha and George. Not yet. I needed backup. I needed someone who was not legally blind or morally bankrupt. I called Marcus. Marcus was my brother-in-law married to David's sister, Emily. He was a brilliant cybersecurity analyst and the only person in the Miller family who treated me like a human being instead of a walking checkbook. While Emily was busy spending her parents' imaginary money, Marcus was the one who actually asked how I was doing. I told him to meet me at a diner in Queens. I told him to come alone. He was there when I walked in, sitting in a back booth away from the windows. Marcus was a large man with a gentle face, always calm, always observing. He stood up when he saw me. He looked at my disheveled hair, my wrinkled clothes, and the wild look in my eyes. He did not ask if I was okay. He knew I was not. "Sit down, Sarah," he said softly, sliding a glass of water toward me. "You sound like you are in trouble." "Not me," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Them." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock the screen. I felt like I was handing him a bomb. "I need you to look at this, Marcus," I said. "I need you to tell me I am not crazy. I need you to tell me that Martha is lying." Marcus took the phone. He put on his glasses. He did not glance at it casually. He watched it with the intensity of a man who spent his life looking for patterns in data. He watched it once. Then he restarted it. Then he pinched the screen to zoom in. The silence stretched between us. The clatter of silverware and the murmur of other customers faded away. It was just me, Marcus, and the ghost on the screen. I watched his face, waiting for the dismissal, waiting for him to tell me it was just a coincidence. I waited for him to say I was grieving and seeing things. But his expression did not change. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice low and rough. "Where was this taken?" "London," I whispered. "Yesterday." He paused, tapping the screen with a thick finger. "Look at the wrist." I leaned in. The image was grainy but clear enough. There was a silver watch on the man's wrist, a very specific watch with a blue face and a complicated dial. "That is a Patek Philippe Nautilus," Marcus said. "David had a picture of that watch taped to his mirror for 3 years. He used to talk about it at every barbecue. He said it was the first thing he would buy if he ever made it big." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had forgotten that detail, but Marcus had not. "And look here," Marcus continued, rewinding the video, to the moment the man picked up the coffee cup from the bench. "Watch his hand." The man reached out with his left hand. He lifted the cup, brought it to his lips, and tilted it. "David was left-handed." I breathed. "Emily is right-handed," Marcus said. "George is right-handed. Martha is right-handed. David was the only lefty in the family." Marcus looked up at me. The kindness in his eyes was replaced by a cold, sharp anger. A look-alike might look like him, Sarah. A look-alike might walk like him. But a look-alike does not wear the exact dream watch of a dead man and use the same dominant hand to drink his coffee. He pushed the phone back to me. "You are not crazy, Sarah. You are not hallucinating. That is David." Hearing him say it out loud broke something inside me. It was vindication, but it was also horror. If Marcus saw it, then it was real. And if it was real, then everything else was a lie. The funeral, the ashes, the debts. "He looked at me, Marcus," I said, my voice cracking. "He saw me, and he ran. He looked terrified." "He should be," Marcus said grimly. "Because if he is alive, that means he faked his death. It means he committed federal fraud. It means he stole $500,000 in life insurance money." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "And it means Martha and George know. There's no way they do not know. I called her, I told him. I sent her the video. She told me I needed medication. She asked for the rent money, Marcus. She literally asked for the rent money while looking at her dead son walking around London." Marcus slammed his hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. "That sounds like them. They have been bleeding you dry for years, Sarah. I told Emily it was wrong. I told her we should be helping you, not watching you drown in their bills. But she is just like them. She thinks the world owes the Millers a living." He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His grip was warm and solid. "I'm not going to let them do this to you anymore. You are the only decent person in this entire mess." "What do?" I asked. "I canceled the transfer. I cut them off. But I need to know the truth. I need to know how he did it." "We will find out," Marcus promised. "I work in data, Sarah. Nothing disappears completely. Not money, not people. If David Miller is walking around London spending money, there is a paper trail. And I'm going to find it." He pulled out his own phone and started typing. "Send me that video file. The raw file. I can pull metadata from it. I can run facial recognition against UK databases. We are going to tear this whole thing apart brick by brick." I looked at Marcus, and for the first time since I saw David in that park, I did not feel alone. I had an ally. And not just any ally. I had the one man who knew exactly how toxic the Miller family really was. "Thank you," I whispered. "Do not thank me yet," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on the frozen image of David's face. "Thank you is for when we put him in handcuffs." I drove to New Jersey in a trance of pure adrenaline. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had turned white. I did not call first. I never visited without calling. For 5 years, Martha and George had insisted on a 24-hour notice before I came over. They claimed they needed time to compose themselves, to make themselves presentable, because their grief was so messy and overwhelming. I used to believe them. I used to think I was being respectful of their pain. Now I knew I was just giving them time to hide the evidence. I pulled into the driveway of the split-level house in the suburbs. It was a modest house, the kind of place that screamed middle-class struggle. I paid the mortgage on this house. I paid the property taxes. I paid for the landscaping service that kept the lawn green. George, old Ford Taurus, was gone. The driveway was empty. Perfect. I walked up the front steps, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had a key on my ring, a key I had only used once before when they were out of town and a pipe burst. I slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. The house was silent. It smelled of lavender and expensive wax, not the stale air of depression and old dust that usually greeted me. The blinds were open, letting in streams of afternoon sunlight. When I visited, the blinds were always drawn. They lived in perpetual twilight, performing their sorrow like seasoned actors on a stage. I stepped into the living room. On the surface, it looked the same. The worn beige sofa, the scuffed coffee table, the photos of David on every surface. It was a shrine to a dead son designed to guilt a grieving widow into writing checks. But I was looking with new eyes now. I walked over to the side table where a stack of mail sat. I flipped through it. Electric bill, gas bill, a catalog for luxury cruises, a glossy brochure for a high-end jewelry auction. Why would two destitute pensioners be looking at cruises? I moved to the hallway. The closet door was slightly ajar. I pulled it open. Usually this closet was full of moth-eaten coats and old umbrellas. Today it was stuffed with shopping bags, Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's. I reached in and pulled out a bag from Nordstrom. Inside was a cashmere sweater. The price tag was still on it. $400. $400. I looked down at my own shoes. They were scuffed at the toes because I had not bought myself a new pair in 2 years. I had been eating ramen noodles and working double shifts, while Martha was buying $400 sweaters with my money. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against the wall. But I was not done. I needed to see it all. I needed to see the full extent of their betrayal. I walked to the door of the basement. Martha always told me the basement was off limits. She said it was full of mold, that it was unsafe, that they could not afford to fix it. I had offered to pay for mold remediation twice, but she had refused, saying she did not want strangers in the house. I opened the door. There was no smell of mold. There was the hum of a climate control system. I flipped the light switch and walked down the carpeted stairs. I stopped at the bottom, my breath catching in my throat. It was not a basement. It was a country club lounge. The floor was covered in plush cream carpeting. One wall was lined with a temperature-controlled wine cellar, stocked with bottles that looked vintage. In the center of the room sat a massive leather sectional facing an 80-inch flat-screen television. But it was the corners of the room that made my blood run cold. Stacked against the far wall were sets of golf clubs, not just any clubs. These were Hanma Bears clubs, the kind that cost thousands of dollars a set. George claimed his arthritis was so bad he could barely hold a spoon, yet here were clubs that required a perfect swing. On the other side of the room was a display case. It was filled with handbags, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Hermes. I walked over to the case. I opened it and touched the leather of a black Birkin bag. It was soft, buttery, real. A bag that cost more than my car. A bag that had a waiting list. Martha had told me last week she could not afford her blood pressure medication. She had cried on the phone, wheezing about how she was cutting pills in half to make them last, and all the while she had a fortune sitting in her basement. They were not just spending my money, they were laundering it. They were living like royalty underground while playing peasants above. I felt a scream building in my chest, but I swallowed it down. Screaming would not help. I needed something else. I needed a connection. I needed to know how they were talking to him. I ran back upstairs. The kitchen. The hub of the house. I started tearing through the cabinets. I pulled out pots and pans, letting them crash to the floor. I ripped open drawers, dumping silverware onto the linoleum. I did not know what I was looking for, but I knew it had to be here. They were old school. They would not trust the cloud or encrypted apps on their iPads. They would have something physical. I opened the pantry. It was stocked with gourmet items, hidden behind boxes of generic store-brand crackers, truffle oil, imported chocolates, caviar. I grabbed a box of cornflakes from the middle shelf. It was the only normal thing in there. It felt heavy, heavier than cereal should be. I shook it. There was a solid thud inside, not the rustle of flakes. I ripped the top of the box open and plunged my hand inside. My fingers brushed against plastic. I pulled it out. It was a phone, a cheap black burner phone, the kind you buy at a gas station for $20. It was wrapped in a Ziploc bag to keep the cereal dust out. My hands were trembling as I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. The battery was fully charged. There were no apps, no games, no internet browser history. I went to the contacts. There was only one number saved. It was saved under the name Phoenix. Phoenix, the bird that rises from the ashes, the perfect code name for a man who rose from a fiery plane crash. I opened the messages. The inbox was full. Daily updates, money confirmations. Sent yesterday 10 a.m. transfer received. Enjoy the golf. Sent Tuesday 4 p.m. Tell Sarah the roof is leaking. We need an extra 500. Sent Monday 9 a.m. She is suspicious about the bank delay. Stall her. I scrolled to the very bottom to the most recent message. It had been received just a few hours ago, right after I had called Martha from London, right after I had sent her the video. The timestamp was from this morning. The sender was Phoenix. The message was short. It was brutal, and it confirmed my worst nightmare. She saw you in London. Initiate Plan B. Plan B. I stared at the glowing screen. Plan A had been to fake his death, steal the insurance money, and bleed me dry for 5 years. Plan A had worked perfectly until I walked past a park in Kensington. Now they were moving to Plan B. I did not know what Plan B was, but looking at the burner phone in my hand and the luxury bunker in the basement, I knew one thing for certain. Plan B did not end well for me. I shoved the phone into my pocket. I needed to get out of this house. I needed to get to Marcus. I needed to disappear before George and Martha came home and realized their secret was out. I turned to leave, but then I froze. The front door, which I had left unlocked, opened. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, angry footsteps. Well, 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 a voice boomed from the living room. It was George. I stood in the kitchen, trapped. I could hear him walking toward me. I could hear the jingle of his car keys, and underneath that I could hear something else, the click of a deadbolt sliding into place. He had locked the front door. I was not alone in the house anymore, and Plan B had just started. I sat in the leather chair of my corner office in Manhattan, watching Marcus type furiously on my laptop. My hands were still shaking from the encounter at the house in New Jersey. I had barely escaped George by threatening to trigger the silent alarm on my phone, a bluff that worked only because he was a coward at heart. But now we were safe behind the glass walls of my agency, and we were hunting. We need access to everything, Sarah Marcus said, without looking up. Social security numbers, bank account routing numbers, the lease agreement. I have it all, I said, pulling a file from my locked drawer. As the guarantor on their lease, I had legal access to their financial data. I had never looked at it before because I trusted them. I thought I was preserving their dignity. Now I knew I was just preserving their crime scene. Marcus took the papers and his fingers flew across the keyboard. He was not just an IT guy, he was a forensic data analyst. He tracked digital footprints for a living, and right now he was tracking the ghost of my husband. "Okay, I am in, Marcus," said his voice tight. "I have access to their joint checking account, the one you deposit the rent and allowance into. Put it on the big screen," I said. He cast his laptop screen to the large presentation monitor on the wall. Spreadsheets and transaction logs filled the view. It looked like a chaotic mess of numbers, but Marcus began to filter them. "Here are your deposits," he said, pointing to the recurring incoming transfers. $3,000 on the first of every month, like clockwork. I stared at the numbers. 5 years, 60 months, $180,000. That was not just money. That was my blood, sweat, and tears. That was every vacation I did not take, every dress I did not buy, every meal I skipped. "Now let us see where it goes," Marcus said. He typed a command. The screen shifted, showing the outgoing transactions. I expected to see pharmacy bills. I expected to see grocery store charges, maybe even the payments for the luxury items I saw in the basement. But the screen was almost blank. There were no payments to local supermarkets, no payments to the electric company, no payments to doctors. "Where are the bills?" I asked, stepping closer to the screen. "How are they paying for electricity? How are they eating?" "They are using cash for that." Marcus said, his eyes scanning the data, probably cashing out small amounts from a different account we cannot see yet. "But look at this." He pointed to a recurring outgoing transfer. It happened exactly 24 hours after my deposit every single month. Transfer to external entity, $3,000. "It is being moved," I whispered. "They are not spending it. They are moving it." Marcus clicked on the transaction ID. He began to trace the routing number. The screen flashed with lines of code as he bypassed the initial bank security. "It is going to a shell company," Marcus muttered. "Kestrel Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware. Let me see who owns Kestrel." He typed faster. A loading bar appeared on the screen. My heart pounded against my ribs. "Got it," Marcus said. "But it is not a person. It is a wallet." "A wallet?" I asked, confused. "A cryptocurrency wallet," Marcus explained, turning to face me. "The money goes into Kestrel Holdings, which immediately converts it into Bitcoin and transfers it to an anonymous digital wallet. Once it hits the blockchain, it is virtually untraceable for the average person." "But you are not the average person," I said. "No, I am not." Marcus cracked his knuckles. He opened a new software program, one that looked dark and complex. He input the wallet address. "I cannot see who owns the wallet," Marcus said, "but I can see where the wallet is being accessed from." Every time a transaction is made, every time money is withdrawn, the user leaves a digital IP fingerprint. If they are sloppy, and they usually are, I can pinpoint the location. He hit enter. A map of the world appeared on the screen. A red dot began to ping. It was not in New Jersey. It was not in New York. The map zoomed in, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. It hovered over Europe, then the United Kingdom, then London. The red dot settled firmly over the district of Kensington. I felt the air leave my lungs. "He is there," I whispered. Marcus zoomed in further. The dot was pulsing over a specific block. "Wait," Marcus said, leaning in. "I can correlate this with local spending data. If he is converting the crypto back to fiat currency to spend it in London, there will be a trail." He opened another window overlaying credit card transaction data that he had somehow accessed. "Here we go. The crypto wallet offloads funds to a prepaid debit card issued in the Cayman Islands. That card was used yesterday at a Waitrose grocery store in Kensington. It was used this morning at a private school called the Harrington Academy. The tuition payment," I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," Marcus said. £3,000, roughly $4,000. Paid this morning." I stared at the screen. The truth hit me with the force of a freight train. I have not been supporting Martha and George. Marcus looked at me, his expression grim. "No, Sarah. You have been paying his rent. You have been buying his groceries. You have been paying the tuition for his daughter." I felt my knees give out, and I sank into the chair. For 5 years, I thought I was a martyr. I thought I was the grieving widow sacrificing everything to keep my dead husband's parents alive. But I was just the financier. I was the silent partner in his new life. Every dollar I scrimped and saved did not go to medicine for a sick old woman. It went to that little girl in the park. It went to the pregnant woman in the designer coat. It went to the Patek Philippe watch on David's wrist. He did not just leave me Marcus. He made me pay for his exit. He made me pay for his new happiness. Marcus stood up and walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "This is not just fraud, Sarah. This is evil. They looked you in the eye and cried poverty while they funneled your money to the man who broke your heart." The rage that had been simmering inside me since London began to boil over. It was hot and suffocating. "They are laughing at me," I said. "Every month when that transfer hits, they must laugh. The stupid widow, the gullible cash cow." Marcus looked back at the screen. "We have the proof, Sarah. We have the financial trail linking your bank account to his location in London. We have the IP addresses. We have the school payments. This proves he is alive, and it proves they are complicit." "What do we do?" I asked, wiping a tear from my cheek. I was done crying. I wanted action. "We cut the cord," Marcus said. "But we do not just stop the payments. We burn the bridge while they are still standing on it." I sat at my desk and watched the cursor blink on the banking website. For 5 years, I had been the perfect widow. I had been the dutiful daughter-in-law. I had been the safety net that caught them every time they fell. But looking at the map of London on the screen, looking at the digital trail of my money funding my dead husband's new life, something inside me finally snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet, terrifying sound of a steel cable breaking under too much tension. I looked at Marcus. He gave me a single sharp nod. "Do it, Sarah." I clicked the mouse. "Cancel recurring transfer." A little box popped up asking if I was sure. It asked if I wanted to skip just 1 month. It tried to guilt me with automated customer service prompts. I hit confirm so hard my finger hurt. The status changed from scheduled to canceled. That was $3,000 they would not see tomorrow. That was $3,000 David would not be spending on private school tuition in London. But I was not done. I was just getting started. I pulled the lease agreement out of the file folder. I was the guarantor. My name was on the dotted line. I had used my credit score to get them that house because their credit was ruined by what they claimed were medical bills. But what I now knew were luxury purchases. I picked up my office phone and dialed the property management company in New Jersey. Mr. Henderson, the landlord, liked me. He liked me because for 60 months I had never been a day late. "Sarah," he answered cheerfully. "What can I do for you?" "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice steady and professional. "I am calling to inform you that I am terminating my guarantee on the lease for the Maple Street property, effectively immediately. I am exercising the early termination clause. There was a pause. Sarah, are you sure? That means the tenants will have to requalify on their own. You know, Martha and George do not have the income. If you pull out, I have to start eviction proceedings. It is in the contract. I know the contract, Mr. Henderson, I said. I wrote it. Send the eviction notice. But Sarah, it is winter. Send it. I hung up. I did not feel bad. I did not feel the crushing weight of responsibility that usually sat on my chest. I felt lighter. I felt like I was cutting sandbags off a hot air balloon. Next was the credit card. The American Express Platinum I had given them 3 years ago. They had told me they needed it for prescriptions and emergency car repairs. I had handed it over like a naive fool, thinking I was helping them survive. I logged into the Amex portal. I pulled up the transaction history. Yesterday there was a charge for $300 at a steakhouse in Cherry Hill. 2 days ago, a $500 charge at a luxury day spa. Last week, $1,000 at a golf pro shop. Emergency repairs. Prescriptions. They were eating steak and getting massages while I ate tuna from a can at my desk. I did not just lock the card, I reported it stolen. I flagged every transaction from the last 6 months as fraudulent. I wanted the investigation to be thorough. I wanted the credit card company to call them. I wanted them to feel the heat. Card canceled. Fraud alert active. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. It was done. The flow of money had stopped. The faucet was turned off. Now we wait, Marcus said quietly. It will not take long. He was right. It did not take long at all. 2 hours later, my cell phone began to ring. It was not the house line. It was George Mobile. I stared at the screen. The name Dad George flashed brightly. I used to see that name and feel a wave of sympathy. Now I saw it and felt nothing but cold calculation. I put it on speakerphone. Marcus leaned in, listening. I answered. I did not say hello. You ungrateful little witch. George's voice filled the room. It was not the frail, shaky voice of the grieving father he usually played. It was a roar. It was the voice of a man who had just realized his free ride was over. George, I said, calm as ice. Do not you George me, he screamed. I just got an alert from the bank. The transfer was canceled, and the card was declined at the liquor store. What the hell do you think you are doing? I am cutting expenses, George. Times are tough. You make 6 figures, Sarah. You have plenty of money. You are doing this to hurt us. You are doing this because you are a spiteful, vindictive woman. We are your family. We are David's parents. There it was. The name. The weapon they always used. How dare you, he continued, his voice trembling with fake righteousness. After everything we have been through. After we took you in. After we let you be part of this family. You want to kill us? Is that it? You want to see us starve. You want to see 2 old sick people thrown out on the street in the snow. It is May. George, I said. There is no snow. Do not get smart with me, he bellowed. You are a monster, a cold, heartless monster. He paused for breath, and then he delivered the line I knew was coming. The line that was supposed to break me. David is looking down on you right now, Sarah. He is looking down from heaven, and he is ashamed. He is weeping to see what you have become. You are dishonoring his memory. You are spitting on his grave. He took a jagged breath, preparing for the finale. David is rolling in his grave right now, Sarah. Rolling in his grave because of you. I looked at Marcus. He raised an eyebrow. I leaned closer to the phone. I let the silence hang for a beat. I wanted him to think he had won. I wanted him to think I was crying. You are right, George, I said softly. I heard him exhale a sound of triumph. He thought I was folding. He thought the checkbook was opening again. He is rolling. I continued, my voice hardening into steel. But he is not in a grave, George. There was a confused silence on the other end. What? I said he is not in a grave. He is in London. He is in Kensington, to be exact. I saw him, George. I saw him yesterday. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a man who had just stepped off a cliff and realized there was no ground beneath him. I saw him with his new wife. I said, driving the knife in deeper. I saw him with his daughter. I saw the Patek Philippe watch. I saw the scar on his chin. And he saw me, George. He saw me, and he ran. George did not speak. I could hear his breathing heavy and ragged. So you are right, I said. He has risen from the grave. It is a miracle, George. A biblical miracle. Sarah George's voice was a whisper now stripped of all its bluster. Sarah, listen to me. You are confused. You are seeing things. No, I am not. I cut him off. I have a video. I have a 4K video of your dead son walking through a park in London. And I have the financial records, George. I know about the crypto wallet. I know about the shell company. I know about the tuition payments. I paused, letting the weight of the evidence crush him. So here is the question, George. Do you want me to send that video to the police? Do you want me to send it to the FBI? Because faking a death and collecting insurance money is a federal crime, and aiding and abetting a fugitive is also a crime. George made a sound like a strangled whimper. I am holding the phone, George. I am ready to dial. Do you want to explain to the authorities how you have been laundering my money to a dead man? The line went dead. He hung up. I looked at Marcus. He was smiling a grim, satisfied smile. He is terrified, Marcus said. Good, I said, putting the phone down. He should be, because I am not done with them yet. I thought cutting off the money would stop them. I thought the threat of the police would silence them. I was naive. I forgot that a cornered animal does not just cower, it bites. And the Millers were not just cornered, they were rabid. They did not wait for me to expose them. They launched a preemptive strike that was so vicious and so calculated it took my breath away. It started at 6 in the morning with a barrage of notifications that vibrated my phone off the nightstand. I picked it up, squinting against the harsh light. I had been tagged in a post by Martha. I opened Facebook, and there it was. A long, rambling, heartfelt essay accompanied by a photo of me looking disheveled and teary-eyed at David's funeral 5 years ago. It breaks our hearts to share this, Martha wrote, but we have no choice. Our beloved daughter-in-law, Sarah, has suffered a severe mental break. The grief of losing David has finally overtaken her after 5 years of holding it in. She has become paranoid, delusional, and cruel. She has cut us off, abandoned us in our old age, and is making wild accusations about seeing David alive. She believes he is walking around London. It is a tragedy to watch someone you love lose their grip on reality. Please pray for her, and please forgive her outbursts. She is not herself. She has stopped taking her medication, and we are terrified for her safety. It was a masterclass in manipulation. It turned my accusation into a symptom of insanity. It turned their cruelty into victimhood. It framed my rage as a psychotic episode. I scrolled down, my hands shaking. The comments were pouring in. So sad, sending prayers, Martha. Grief is a terrible thing, poor girl. I always thought she seemed a little unstable lately. And then I saw the comment that felt like a physical knife in my back. It was from Emily, David's sister, Marcus' wife. The woman I had comforted when her cat died. The woman I had bought expensive birthday gifts for every year because I wanted her to feel loved. We are trying to get her help, Emily wrote, but she refuses to see a doctor. She is lashing out at everyone who tries to help. We are so worried she might hurt herself or someone else. Emily, she was in on it. She had to be. Marcus was helping me expose them, and his own wife was publicly crucifying me. She was painting a target on my back to protect the brother who had abandoned her. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she had known all along and was protecting her cut of the money. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reply. I wanted to post the video of David right there in the comments. But before I could type a single word, my work email pinged. Then my work phone began to ring. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call came in. It was Mr. Sterling, my biggest client, the man looking for a $12 million penthouse in Tribeca. I had to answer. Sarah, Mr. Sterling said, his voice cool and distant. I am calling to let you know we are going to go in a different direction regarding the search. Mr. Sterling, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. We are scheduled to view the loft on Hudson Street today. I have the keys. Yes, well, my wife saw the posts on Facebook, Sarah. We cannot have someone unstable handling a transaction of this magnitude. We need discretion and reliability. I am sorry, but please do not contact us again. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. $12 million. A $300,000 commission. Gone in 10 seconds. The phone rang again. It was my broker, the owner of the agency. Sarah, come to my office. Now. I drove to the office in a daze. I felt like I was moving underwater. People were looking at me. I was sure of it. They had seen the post. They thought I was crazy. The crazy widow who sees her dead husband. The woman who abuses the elderly in-laws who rely on her. When I got to the office, my broker did not even let me sit down. I have had 3 cancellations this morning, Sarah. 3. High net worth clients do not want drama. They do not want a realtor who is publicly melting down. You need to take a leave of absence. Indefinite. Sort your life out. Get help. But do not come back here until this is fixed. I walked out of the building carrying a box with my personal items. I had been fired. In the span of 4 hours, they had stripped me of my reputation, my income, and my dignity. They had scorched the earth so that even if I told the truth, no one would believe me. I was the crazy woman. They were the grieving saints. I went back to my apartment and sat in the dark. I felt small. I felt defeated. Maybe I should just give up. Maybe I should just let them win. Then there was a knock on the door. A rhythmic, heavy knock. I looked through the peephole. It was Marcus. He looked terrible. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was carrying a thick manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. I opened the door. "They got me, Marcus," I said, my voice hollow. "I lost my job. They convinced everyone I am crazy. Emily helped them." Marcus walked in and locked the door behind him. He pulled the shades down. He did not look at me. He paced the small living room, his energy filling the space with a frantic intensity. "I know," he said. "I saw the post. I tried to stop her, Sarah. I woke up this morning and saw what she wrote. I screamed at her. I told her the truth. I told her about the crypto wallet. I told her about the tuition payments. I told her I had proof. And I asked. She laughed at me." Marcus said, stopping and turning to face me. "She laughed, Sarah. She said I was gullible. She said you had brainwashed me. She said if I sided with you, I was betraying the family. She said I was trying to tear them apart." He ran a hand over his face. "She kicked me out, Sarah. My own wife kicked me out of the house because I would not help them destroy you." I looked at him. He had lost his home too. He was a casualty of this war, just like me. "I'm so sorry, Marcus." "Do not be sorry," he said, his voice hardening. "Be angry, because you do not know the half of it yet." He threw the manila envelope onto the coffee table. It hit the wood with a heavy thud that echoed in the silent apartment. "She made a mistake," Marcus said. "Emily. She is arrogant. She thought I was just a dumb husband who fixed the Wi-Fi. She forgot what I actually do for a living. She left her old laptop in the closet, the one she used 5 years ago around the time David died. She thought she had wiped it. She deleted the files and emptied the trash bin." He looked at me with a grim satisfaction. "But nothing is ever really deleted, Sarah. Not if you know how to look." I recovered the hard drive. I found a folder buried deep in the system files. It was labeled Project Phoenix. "Phoenix," I whispered, "the name on the burner phone." "Open it," Marcus said. I sat down and opened the envelope. My hands were trembling again. Inside were stacks of printed emails and scanned documents. I picked up the first sheet. It was an email exchange between David and a man named Dr. Alistair Vance. The email address was from a county coroner office in Pennsylvania near the site of the crash. The subject line was specimen acquisition. "Payment received," Vance wrote. "The subject is a John Doe approximately 35 years old, 6 feet tall, found in a Philadelphia alleyway. Overdose, no next of kin. Dental records can be altered to match provided samples." I felt the room spin. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "Read the next one," Marcus commanded. I picked up the next document. It was a flight manifest for the private plane, and underneath it was a medical examiner report. "Remains consistent with high-velocity impact and fire damage. Dental records confirm identity as David Miller." I looked up at Marcus, tears blurring my vision. "That was not David in the casket," I whispered. "No," Marcus said, his voice trembling with disgust. "It was a homeless man, Sarah. A stranger who died alone in an alley. David bought his body. He paid a corrupt coroner $50,000 to swap the dental records and put a dead man in the pilot seat. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. He did not just run away, Sarah. He desecrated a human body. He set a corpse on fire to cover his tracks. That is not just fraud. That is a federal crime. That is tampering with human remains. That is monstrous. I looked at the papers in my hands. The emails were dated 3 weeks before the crash. Emily was copied on every single one of them. She knew. She helped him, Marcus said. She wired the money to the coroner. She coordinated the transport of the body. She knew the whole time she was hugging you at the funeral that the box was filled with a stranger. I stood up. The sadness was gone. The fear was gone. The worry about my job was gone. All that was left was a cold, white-hot clarity. They called me crazy, I said, my voice steady. They tried to destroy my life to hide a family vacation in London. But they are hiding a body, Marcus. They are hiding a dead body. Yes, Marcus said. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy in my hands, heavier than gold. They want a war, I said, walking to the door. Marcus nodded. Let us give them one. Let us give them a war they will never forget. I sat at my kitchen table with the evidence of a federal crime spread out like a morbid buffet. The autopsy reports, the flight logs, the emails between my husband and a corrupt coroner. It was enough to send them all to prison for 20 years. Marcus was pacing the room, ready to drive straight to the FBI field office in Manhattan. He wanted to kick down doors. He wanted to see them in handcuffs by dinner time, but I told him to wait. If we went to the police now, David would vanish. He was in London with a new identity and a head start. The moment he caught wind of an investigation, he would disappear into the fog. He had done it once with a burning plane, and he would do it again. I did not just want justice. I wanted him. I wanted to look him in the eye and watch him realize he had lost. I wanted to destroy him with the same weapon he used to destroy me. Greed. They were starving. I had cut off the rent, the credit cards, and the cash allowance. David in London was likely panicking because his tuition payments were bouncing and his crypto wallet was empty. They were desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Desperate people walk right into traps if the bait is shiny enough. I pulled out my phone. My notifications were still blowing up with hate comments on Martha Post about my mental breakdown. Strangers were calling me unhinged. My former clients were blocking my number. My reputation was in tatters. I decided to lean into it. I opened Facebook. I started typing. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling, not with fear, but with the sheer effort of suppressing my rage. I had to sound broken. I had to sound like the medicated, confused widow they wanted everyone to believe I was. I had to apologize for a crime I did not commit to catch them in the one they did. I wrote the post slowly, carefully, crafting every lie. To my family and friends, I began. I am writing this from a place of deep shame. The last few days have been a blur of grief and confusion. I stopped taking my medication, and I let my hallucinations get the better of me. I accused my loving in-laws of terrible things. I said things that were not true. I am so sorry for the pain I have caused Martha and George. They have been nothing but supportive, and I treated them like enemies. I paused. That was the hook. Now for the bait. I have been going through David old files trying to find some peace, and in my confusion, I found something I had completely forgotten about. A paperwork folder from a separate life insurance policy David took out through a private firm in the Cayman Islands. I thought I was imagining it, but I called the number today. It is real. $2 million. It has been sitting there unclaimed for 5 years because I was too overwhelmed to open the mail. I do not deserve this money, not after how I behaved. I want to make things right. I want to sign 50% of it over to Martha and George to secure their retirement and pay for the pain I caused. I just hope they can find it in their hearts to forgive me and help me navigate the legal process to claim it. I am so lost without David. I read it over. It was pathetic. It was groveling. It was perfect. $2 million. $1 million for them. It was a lie, of course. There was no policy. There was no Cayman Islands account. But they did not know that. All they would see was a pile of cash, big enough to solve all their problems, big enough to keep David living like a king in London. I looked at Marcus. He was watching me with a mix of awe and terror. "You are going to post that," he asked. "You are going to admit to being crazy." "I am going to give them exactly what they want," I said. "They want a crazy widow with a checkbook. I will be the crazy widow." I hit post. The reaction was instantaneous. The likes started rolling in. Comments from family friends saying they were praying for my recovery, praising me for owning up to my mistakes. And then 30 seconds later, my phone rang. It was Martha. The speed of it made me laugh, a short, bitter bark of a sound. She must have been sitting with her phone in her hand, refreshing her feed, waiting for me to break. 30 seconds. That was how long it took for her integrity to crumble in the face of money. I put the phone on the table and hit speaker. I gestured for Marcus to stay silent. "Hello, Martha," I said, making my voice sound small and wavering. "Sarah, honey." Her voice was not the screeching harpy from yesterday. It was warm. It was dripping with honey and syrup. It was the voice she used when she wanted me to pay for a vacation. "I just saw your post, sweetie," Martha cooed. "Oh, Sarah, I am crying right now. I am so glad you are feeling better. We were so worried about you. We did not want to be angry. We knew it was just the grief talking." I forced a sob. I pinched my leg hard to make my voice shake. "I am so sorry, Martha. I do not know what happened. I just saw that man in London and I snapped. I stopped taking my pills. I thought everyone was against me." "Shh, shh, it is okay," Martha soothed. "We forgive you, Sarah. Of course we forgive you. You are family. George and I were just saying that we know you did not mean to cut us off. We know you love us." She paused. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I could practically hear her calculating. "And Sarah, about this folder you found, the insurance policy." There it was, 45 seconds into the call. "Yes," I sniffled. "It was in the bottom of his old filing cabinet, the one in storage. I must have missed it when he died. It is from a company called Zurich Global. $2 million, Martha. I called them and they said the policy is still active. It just needs a claimant signature." $2 million, Martha repeated. Her voice cracked slightly. "That is a blessing, Sarah, a true blessing from God. David must have been looking out for us. He knew we would need this." She did not question why David would have a secret policy. She did not ask why it was in the Cayman Islands. She did not care. She just saw the zeros. "I want to share it," I said. "I want to give you and George half. I know I stopped the rent and the allowance. I was confused. I want to make it up to you. $1 million should cover everything, right?" "Oh, Sarah, you are too generous," Martha gushed. "But you are right. It is the fair thing to do. After all, we raised him. We suffered the loss too. The audacity was breathtaking. They raised a fraudster. They suffered the loss of a son they talked to every day on a burner phone. But there is a problem," I said, dropping the obstacle. "What problem?" Martha's voice sharpened instantly. "The insurance company. They are very strict. Because the policy was offshore, and because so much time has passed, they need witnesses. They need me to come in person to sign the release forms. But they also said they need 2 character witnesses to verify David's identity and my mental state since I have been having these episodes." "I can come," Martha said quickly. "George and I can come. Where is the office? Is it in New York?" "No," I said. "That is the problem. The underwriter handling this specific type of high-value claim is based in their European headquarters." I took a deep breath. "They are in London, Martha." Silence. I held my breath. This was the gamble. If they refused to go to London, if they were too scared of being seen near David, the plan would fail. But I was betting on their arrogance. I was betting on the fact that they thought I was stupid and medicated. "London," Martha said slowly. "That is a long trip, Sarah. George has his back pain." I know I whined. I do not think I can do it alone. I am scared to travel by myself after what happened last time. If I go alone, I might have another episode. I might mess up the paperwork. I need family with me. If you cannot come, maybe I should just forget about it. It is too much stress." "No." Martha shouted. "No, do not forget about it. Do not be silly, Sarah. It is $2 million. We cannot just walk away from David Legacy." She lowered her voice. I could hear her whispering to someone, probably George. "Okay, Sarah, we will do it. For you. We will make the sacrifice. We will come to London with you." I smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "Sorry." "Thank you, Martha. You do not know what this means to me. I will book the tickets. First class. I still have some miles left." "That sounds wonderful, dear. When should we leave?" "As soon as possible," I said. "The insurance agent said the fiscal year is closing. We need to sign by Friday." "We will pack tonight," Martha said. "And Sarah?" "Yes. Do not worry about the rent money. We know you are good for it now. Just focus on getting that policy ready." I hung up the phone. The room was silent. Marcus let out a long, low whistle. "They took it," he said. "They actually took it. They are greedy, Marcus," I said, standing up. "They are starving for cash because I cut off their supply, and they think I am a broken woman trying to buy their love back." I walked over to the window looking out at the New York skyline. "They are going to London," I said, "but they are not going to meet an insurance agent." Marcus nodded. "No, they are going to lead us right to him." I turned back to him. "Get the tickets, Marcus, and get a separate flight for us. We are going to be on the same plane, but they are not going to see us. When they land in Heathrow, they are going to call him. They are going to tell him the cash cow is back and she is bringing a slaughterhouse." I was in the middle of printing out fake legal documents when my phone rang again. It was Martha. Of course it was. Greed does not sleep, and neither do parasites when they smell fresh blood. I put the phone on speaker so Marcus could hear. I expected her to ask about flight times or hotel arrangements. I expected her to complain about her legroom or ask if the hotel had a spa. But Martha had been thinking. She had been calculating. And she had decided that sharing the money was not enough. She wanted control. "Sarah," she said, her voice dropping into a hush reverence that made my skin crawl. "Something incredible happened last night. I had a dream, a vision really. David came to me." I looked at Marcus. He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they would get stuck. "He looked so peaceful," Sarah Martha continued. "He was standing in a field of white light, and he spoke to me. He told me that he is worried about you. He knows how fragile you are right now with your episodes. He told me that the money, that $2 million, it is a heavy burden. He said he does not want you to carry it alone. He wants George and me to hold it for safekeeping, just until you are better, of course." The audacity was breathtaking. She was using my dead husband, Ghost, a ghost she knew was actually eating croissants in Kensington, to gaslight me out of my own fake fortune. She wanted the check cut directly to them. She wanted to cut me out of the loop before we even landed in London. "Oh, Martha," I said, injecting a wobble into my voice. "That is so beautiful. I am so glad he visited you." It was a sign Sarah Martha pressed. He was very clear. "He thinks it would be safer if the insurance company transferred the funds to our account. We can manage it for you. We can give you an allowance, just like you gave us." I clenched my fist until my nails dug into my palm. An allowance. My own money given back to me in crumbs. "I wish we could do that, Martha," I said, letting out a long sigh. "I really do. It would make everything so much simpler." "But the lawyers are being nightmares." "What do you mean?" Martha demanded, her tone sharpening. "I told you this policy is tricky." I lied, my eyes fixed on the blank wall ahead. Because it was offshore and because of the time lapse, they have invoked a clause called verification of identity. The underwriter will not release a cent unless I have a witness present at the signing. Someone who knew David for at least 10 years. Someone who can swear under oath that he was who he said he was. "Well, George and I can do that," Martha said quickly. "We are his parents. That is the problem," I said. "They said family members are ineligible due to conflict of interest. They need a third party." Silence. I could hear the gears turning in her head. "So I have been thinking," I continued, dropping the bait. "Since we are going to London anyway, I thought I would look up some of David's old friends. Remember Mark from college? He lives in Chelsea now. Or maybe his old business partner, Greg. He travels to the UK often. I was going to call them today and ask if they would meet us at the insurance office. Panic exploded on the other end of the line. It was palpable. No, Martha shouted. No, absolutely not. You cannot call them Sarah. Why not? I asked innocently. We need a witness, Martha. If I do not find one, the money stays frozen. Mark would be happy to help. You cannot involve outsiders, Martha stammered. This is a private family matter. David would not want people knowing about his secret accounts. It would ruin his reputation. Think of his legacy, Sarah. I am thinking of the money, Martha, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. I need that $2 million. And if calling Mark is the only way to get it, then I have to call him. I'm going to email him right now. Do not. Martha practically screamed, Sarah, promise me. Promise me you will not contact anyone. Give me an hour. Let me talk to George. We will figure something out. Just do not make any calls. Okay, I said. I will wait. But we are running out of time, Martha. I hung up. Marcus let out a low whistle. You are evil, he said, with genuine admiration. I learned from the best, I replied. They were panicking now. They were terrified that if I started digging around London, if I started calling David old friends, I might find out the truth. They needed a witness, but they could not use a stranger. They were stuck, and I knew exactly who they would call to solve the problem. They would call Phoenix. We waited. An hour passed, then 2. I busied myself booking the tickets, 3 first-class seats for them and me, and 2 economy seats on the same flight for Marcus and his partner, a private investigator he had hired named Jack. We were setting the stage for a transatlantic takedown. My laptop pinged. It was not a text. It was not a voicemail. It was an email notification. I opened my inbox. The email was from a sender I did not recognize. A string of random numbers and letters at a secure Proton Mail domain. The subject line was blank. I clicked on it. There was no greeting, no header, just 3 sentences that stopped my heart. Sarah, meet me alone. Do not tell my parents and do not tell the police. I am alive. I stared at the screen, the pixels blurring as my eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of shock. He had done it. He had actually done it. David had broken cover. He had bypassed his parents. He had bypassed the burner phone system. He had reached out directly to me. Why, Marcus asked, reading over my shoulder. Why would he risk it? Because he is greedy, I whispered, and because he is arrogant. He thought he could control me. He thought that after 5 years of grieving, after 5 years of paying his debts, I was still the same weak, devoted wife who would do anything for him. He thought that if he revealed himself, if he spun me a sob story about why he had to run, I would forgive him. He thought I would hand him the $2 million and keep his secret. He did not know I had seen him in the park. He did not know I had seen the new wife and the child. He thought he was still the hero in my story, not the villain. He wants to cut Martha and George out of the deal, Marcus said, realizing it at the same time I did. He wants the money for himself. Exactly. Martha had called him in a panic, telling him I was looking for witnesses. She probably told him to find a fake witness to hire an actor. But David saw an opportunity. Why split the money with his parents when he could manipulate his emotionally unstable wife into giving it all to him? He was going to try to charm me. He was going to try to seduce me one last time. I typed a reply, my fingers steady. Where? The response came back within seconds. London, the Tate Modern, Turbine Hall, Friday at noon. Come alone, Sarah. If I see anyone else, I will disappear forever. I looked at Marcus. He thinks he is setting a trap, I said. Marcus smiled, and it was not a nice smile. He is right. He just does not know he is the rat. I replied one last time. I will be there. I love you, David. I knew you were not gone. I hit send. The trap was set. The players were in motion. Martha and George thought they were going to London to claim a fortune. David thought he was going to London to con his gullible wife. None of them knew that I was coming to London to bury them all. I had my boarding pass for London in my hand when the second email arrived. It was 3 hours before my flight. The subject line was simply, change of plans. I opened it and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning in my apartment. London is compromised, the message read. Too many eyes. I flew back last night. Meet me at the abandoned textile factory in Yonkers. Midnight. Come alone, Sarah. If I see a single police car, I will vanish, and you will never see me again. He was testing me. He was jerking the leash to see if I would still heal. He made me book a flight to London just to cancel it, and force me into a dark warehouse in the middle of the night on the outskirts of New York. It was a power move. It was classic David. I looked at Marcus. He was already loading a small pistol into a shoulder holster. He looked at me and shook his head. "I am not letting you go in there alone, Sarah. You have to." I said, my voice steady. "He will be watching. If he sees you, he runs. You have to wait in the car down the road. I will have the wire. I will have the GPS tracker. If things go wrong, you come in." I drove to Yonkers in the pouring rain. The factory was a skeletal ruin of brick and broken glass, sitting on the edge of the Hudson River. It was the kind of place where bad things happened, the kind of place where a husband who faked his death would feel right at home. I parked my car under a broken street lamp. I checked the digital recorder taped to the inside of my jacket pocket. It was recording. I checked the small canister of pepper spray in my sleeve. I took a deep breath. I stepped out into the rain. "Sarah." The voice came from the shadows of the loading dock. It was a voice I had heard in my dreams for 5 years. A voice I had mourned. A voice I had paid $180,000 to support. David stepped into the light. He did not look like a man on the run. He looked like a movie star. He was wearing a black trench coat that retailed for $2,000. His hair was longer styled in a way that made him look rugged and dangerous. He looked healthy, vibrant, alive. He stopped 10 feet away from me. He looked at my face, searching for the anger, searching for the suspicion. I gave him neither. I gave him the only thing he wanted to see. I gave him adoration. "David," I whispered, letting my knees buckle slightly. "You are real." He rushed forward and caught me before I hit the ground. His hands were warm. He smelled of expensive cologne and rain. He pulled me against his chest and buried his face in my neck. "I am so sorry, Sarah," he sobbed. His body shook with the force of his tears. "I am so sorry I had to leave you. It killed me. Every day away from you was torture. I stood there in the arms of the man who had bought a corpse to fool me. I felt his heart beating against mine. It was a strong, steady rhythm, the rhythm of a liar. Why, I asked, pushing him back slightly so I could look into his eyes. Those blue eyes that had charmed me into selling my house. "Why did you do it, David? Why did you let me bury you?" He framed my face with his hands. His thumbs stroked my cheeks, wiping away the rain. "I did it for you, Sarah. I did it to save your life." He launched into the lie. It was a masterpiece of fiction. He told me about a gambling debt that turned into a misunderstanding with the Albanian mob. He told me they threatened to kill me to skin me alive if he did not pay up. He told me he had to disappear to draw the heat away. "I had to die so you could live," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I paid a man to find a body. I set the fire. I watched from the woods as the police arrived. I wanted to run to you, Sarah. I wanted to tell you, but I knew if I did, they would find you." I nodded, my eyes wide. I was drinking it in. "But London," I said, my voice trembling. "I saw you, David. I saw you with a woman. I saw you with a child." He did not flinch. He did not even blink. "That is the cover, Sarah. The cover. The organization that helped me disappear, they set me up in London. The woman is an operative. Her name is Elena. She is my handler. The child is hers from a previous assignment. We have to pose as a family to blend in. It is not real, Sarah. None of it is real. I sleep on the couch. Every time I look at her, I see you. Every time I hold that little girl, I wish she was ours. It was sickening. It was vile." He was erasing his own daughter, erasing his pregnant wife just to manipulate me. He was denying his own flesh and blood to get access to my imaginary insurance money. He grabbed my hands and kissed them. "But it is over now. The threat is gone. The head of the family was arrested last week. I can come home, Sarah. I can finally come home to you." He was good. He was so good that for a split second, I almost wanted to believe him. I almost wanted to be the girl he fell in love with again. But then I felt the hard plastic of the recorder pressing against my ribs. "I missed you so much," I said, allowing a tear to fall. "I have been so lost without you. Martha and George, they have been trying to help, but it has been hard." He stiffened at the mention of his parents. "Do not tell them," he hissed. "Not yet. They cannot know I am back. They are not strong like you, Sarah. They would slip up. They would tell the wrong person. This has to be just us. Just us. Just me and his greed. So what do we do? I asked. How do we fix this? He pulled me closer. His eyes locked onto mine. The charm was dialed up to maximum voltage. I need to buy my way out of the program, Sarah. The people who helped me hide, they do not let you leave for free. They need a relocation fee, a severance package. Once I pay them, I am a ghost. I can get a new identity. We can move anywhere. Fiji, Bali, just you and me. How much I asked. He licked his lips. A quick nervous flicker of a tongue. 500,000, he whispered. From the insurance policy, I just need 500,000 in cash or crypto. Tonight. If I can pay them tonight, I am free. $500,000, not the full $2 million. He was being careful. He thought asking for the whole amount would make me suspicious. He thought $500,000 was a reasonable price for a husband. I rested my head on his chest. I could hear the greed thumping in his heart. He thought he had me. He thought the cash cow was ready to be milked one last time. I can do that, I whispered. I can get you the money. He hugged me tighter. It was a crushing, suffocating embrace. I knew you would. He breathed into my ear. I knew you would save me, Sarah. You are the only one who ever truly loved me. I stood there in the dark warehouse, surrounded by the smell of rot and rain, holding the man who had murdered me emotionally for 5 years. My hand slipped into my pocket. My fingers curled around the recorder. I felt the record button. It was still depressed. Every word, every lie, every confession. It was all there. Then we will make it happen, I said, pulling back and forcing a smile. We will make everything right. He smiled back. It was the smile of a predator who had just closed his jaws around the neck of a gazelle. Just you and me, Sarah, he said. Forever. Forever, I repeated. But in my head, I was finishing the sentence differently. Forever in a federal prison cell, you son of a bitch. Okay, David, I said, taking a half step back to create just enough space between us. I can do it. I have the access codes on my phone right now. I can move $500,000 into a crypto wallet of your choice within 10 minutes. He exhaled a sound that was half laugh and half sob. He reached for me again, his hands grasping at my arms like a drowning man reaching for a life raft. Thank you, Sarah, he gasped. Thank you. You are saving my life. You are the only person in the world I can trust. I let him touch me, but I did not lean into it. I kept my body rigid, my mind focusing on the cold, hard weight of the trap I was about to spring. But there is a problem, I said. His head snapped up instantly. The gratitude vanished from his face, replaced by a sharp, dangerous suspicion. His eyes darted around the dark warehouse, searching for threats. What problem, Sarah? You said you could do it. Do not play games with me. Not now. I am not playing games. David, I said, keeping my voice trembling just enough to sell the fear. It is the bank. The insurance company set up the payout through a trust in the Cayman Islands. It is designed to be tax-free, but there is a catch. Because I am a U.S. citizen, initiating a transfer over $10,000 to an anonymous wallet triggers an automatic IRS audit flag. His jaw tightened. An audit. I cannot have an audit, Sarah. If the feds look at that money, they will trace it back to the organization. They will find me. Exactly, I said. That is why we have to bypass the flag. The banker told me there is a loophole. If I upload a beneficiary gift affidavit along with the transfer, it classifies the money as a personal gift rather than a transaction. It stops the audit before it starts. But I need the beneficiary to sign it. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the damp concrete walls. You want me to sign a legal document, Sarah? I am dead. Remember, David Miller is ash in a box in New Jersey. If I sign my name on a piece of paper, I go to prison. You do not sign as David Miller, I said quickly, stepping into the lie. You sign as your new identity. Who are you now, David? What is the name on your passport? He hesitated, his eyes scanning my face for any sign of deception. But all he saw was the desperate wife who had paid his bills for 5 years. All he saw was the woman who had just driven into a dangerous warehouse in the middle of the night to save him. Daniel, he said softly. My name is Daniel Thorne. Okay then. Daniel Thorne signs the affidavit. I said, reaching into my inside jacket pocket. "It just needs to match the owner of the receiving wallet. The bank does not care who Daniel Thorne is. They just need a signature to clear the compliance software. If we do not do this, the funds freeze for 30 days. 30 days, he hissed. I do not have 30 days. If I do not pay them by tomorrow morning, they will come for me. Then sign the paper, David, I pleaded, holding out the folded document I had prepared. Just sign it and I will hit send. It is just a formality. He looked at the paper in my hand. It was a single sheet of heavy bond legal paper. In the dim light of the warehouse, it looked official. It looked like salvation. He did not know that Marcus and I had spent 3 hours drafting it this afternoon. He did not know that the dense paragraphs of legal jargon at the top were not about tax compliance. They were a detailed confession. The text clearly stated, I, the undersigned being of sound mind and body, hereby admit that my true legal identity is David Miller, born October 12, 1985. It went on to detail the purchase of the cadaver, the falsification of the flight logs, and the conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. But David would not read the top paragraph. It was dark. He was desperate. And the signature line was at the very bottom, separated by a thick block of meaningless text about liability waivers. He snatched the paper from my hand. Give me a pen, he demanded. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out the pen Marcus had given me. It was a thick silver ballpoint pen with a high gloss finish. It was weighted perfectly, and it had been wiped clean with an alcohol solution 10 minutes ago. It was not just a pen. It was a fingerprint trap. David grabbed it. His thumb pressed firmly against the barrel. His index finger wrapped around the grip. He held it up to the faint light coming from a broken window high above us. Daniel Thorne, he muttered, testing the name on his tongue. He pressed the paper against the damp wall of the factory. He did not read a single word. He did not check the clauses. He just wanted the money. He wanted his freedom. He scribbled a signature at the bottom of the page, Daniel Thorne. It did not matter that he signed a fake name. The document was a confession of using an alias. By signing the alias, he was proving the deception. And more importantly, he was leaving his prints, his DNA, and his handwriting on a document that detailed his entire crime. He handed the paper back to me. He tried to hand the pen back too. Keep it, I said quickly. A gift. For the new life. I did not want to touch the pen. I needed his prints to be the only ones on it. He shoved the pen into his pocket. He looked at me, his eyes wild with anticipation. It is done, Sarah. I signed your paper. Now send the money. I took the document and folded it carefully, placing it back in my pocket right next to the running tape recorder. I felt a surge of triumph so powerful it almost made me dizzy. I had him. I had the confession. I had the prints. And Marcus, sitting in the car down the road, had the video feed from the button camera on my coat, which had captured the entire signing clearly. I pulled out my phone. I opened the banking app. What is the wallet address? I asked. He recited a string of alphanumeric characters. I typed them in. I entered the amount, $500,000. I held the phone up so he could see the screen. His eyes were glued to the confirm button. He was practically salivating. I love you, David, I said softly. I love you too, Sarah, he replied, his eyes never leaving the phone. You are saving me. I pressed the button. Transfer complete. He let out a shout of joy. He grabbed me and spun me around. You did it, he laughed. You actually did it. I am free, Sarah. We are free. He did not know that the transfer I had just sent was not real money. It was a dummy transaction on a test network Marcus had set up. It looked real. It generated a confirmation code, but it was worth absolutely nothing. I pulled away from him. Go, I said. You have the money. Go pay them. I will meet you tomorrow. Where? He asked, breathless. The Plaza Hotel. I lied. Meet me in the lobby at noon. We will start our new life. He kissed me hard on the forehead. The Plaza. Noon. I will be there. He turned and ran into the darkness, his coat flapping behind him like the wings of a vulture. He ran toward his freedom. He ran toward his new life as Daniel Thorne. I stood alone in the empty warehouse listening to his footsteps fade away. I reached into my pocket and touched the folded paper. I waited until I heard the sound of his rental car engine start and fade into the distance. Then I walked out into the rain. Marcus was waiting for me in the sedan down the road. The engine was running. The heater was on. I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. I was soaking wet, shivering and exhausted. I handed Marcus the paper. He signed it, I said. Marcus took the document carefully by the edges and slid it into an evidence bag. I got the video feed, Marcus said. Clear as day. We have him, Sarah. We have him dead to rights. Did he take the pen? Marcus asked. He has it in his pocket, I said. Good. That connects him to the crime scene physically. Marcus put the car in gear. Where to, Sarah? I looked out the window at the rain streaking the glass. Home, I said. I have a party to plan. A party? Marcus asked, confused. Yes, I said, a smile spreading across my face. A memorial service. The 5-year anniversary of David's death is coming up. I think it is time we invited everyone. His parents, his friends, his investors. I looked at Marcus. We are going to give him the funeral he deserves, and this time the body is going to be alive to see it. I rented the grand ballroom at the Pierre Hotel for the memorial. It cost me $15,000 to book the room and another $10,000 for the catering, but I considered it a necessary business expense. I was not planning a party. I was staging a public execution. I invited everyone. I sent engraved invitations to every single person who had commented on Martha's Facebook post, calling me crazy. I invited Mr. Sterling, the client who had fired me. I invited my old broker, who had asked me to take a leave of absence. I invited the neighbors who had whispered behind my back. And of course, I invited Emily. They all came. They came because they were curious. They came because they wanted to see the unstable widow make a scene. Or perhaps they came because I had promised a major announcement regarding the David Miller Memorial Foundation. I told them I was donating the insurance money to charity. People love a tragedy, but they love money more. The room was filled with white lilies. The scent was overpowering, thick and sweet like a funeral parlor. Waiters circulated with champagne trays. A string quartet played somber music in the corner. It was perfect. It was the exact setting of dignified grief that Martha loved to exploit. I stood by the entrance wearing a black dress that cost more than my first car. I greeted everyone with a sad, brave smile. Thank you for coming, I said to Mr. Sterling. I know things ended poorly, but I wanted you to be here for David. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. Of course, Sarah. We were just worried about you. That is all. I smiled, a tight shark-like smile. I know. Tonight we'll clear everything up. Then the doors opened, and the guests of honor arrived. Martha and George walked in like they owned the place. Martha was wearing a new black dress, likely bought with the last dregs of my credit card limit before I cut it off. George was in a suit that strained at the buttons. They looked around the room, assessing the wealth, calculating their share. When they saw me, they rushed over. Martha grabbed my hands, her eyes wide with fake concern. "Sarah, honey," she whispered loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You look so thin. Are you eating?" "I am fine, Martha," I said, pulling my hands away. "I am just focused on tonight." "Is the lawyer here?" George hissed, leaning in close. "Is the paperwork ready?" "Everything is ready, George," I said. "The check is waiting." They relaxed visibly. Their shoulders dropped. They smiled at the guests, accepting condolences with the practiced grace of professional mourners. They thought they had won. They thought I was the broken-cowed daughter-in-law who had finally learned her place. They walked to the front row and sat down in the reserved seats, their heads held high. I waited until the room was full. I waited until everyone had a glass of champagne. Then I walked onto the stage. I tapped the microphone. The sound echoed through the ballroom, silencing the crowd. The string quartet stopped playing. 200 faces turned toward me. "Thank you all for coming." I began, my voice steady and amplified. 5 years ago, we lost David Miller. We buried an empty casket because we were told there was nothing left to find. We mourned a husband, a son, and a brother. I looked down at Martha. She was dabbing her dry eyes with a handkerchief, performing for the audience. "For 5 years, I have carried the weight of that loss," I continued. I have supported his family because I believed it was what David would have wanted. I believed in the sanctity of his memory. But recently, as many of you know, there have been questions about my mental health. There have been accusations that I am delusional, that I am seeing ghosts. I paused. The room was deadly silent. Tonight, I want to put those rumors to rest. I want to share the truth with you. I want to show you exactly what David Legacy really is. I gestured to the massive projection screen behind me. Please watch. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. Martha and George leaned forward, expecting a montage of baby photos and wedding pictures. They expected a tribute to their golden boy. Instead, the screen flickered to life with high-definition footage. It was London. It was the park. The image was crisp and clear, stabilized by Marcus software. It showed a man walking toward the camera. He was wearing a gray coat. He was laughing. A gasp went through the room, a collective intake of breath. "That is David," someone whispered. The camera zoomed in. The scar on the chin, the Patek Philippe watch, the way he held the little girl on his shoulders. Martha froze. Her hand stopped midway to her mouth. George went rigid in his chair. The video cut. Now it was night. The image was grainy, green-tinted night vision. We were in the warehouse in Yonkers. The audio was crystal clear, boosted and filtered to remove the background noise of the rain. "I had to die so you could live," David's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "I paid a man to find a body. I set the fire." The crowd erupted. People were standing up, knocking over chairs. "Oh my God," a woman screamed. "He faked it." The video continued. David's face was illuminated by the cell phone light. He looked desperate. He looked greedy. "I need $500,000, he said on screen, "to buy my way out. Just you and me, Sarah." Then the screen showed the document. The camera zoomed in on the signature at the bottom of the confession. The ink was still wet in the video. Daniel Thorne. But I was not done. I signaled to Marcus in the booth. The screen changed again. This time it was not a video. It was a spreadsheet. A massive scrolling wall of numbers. The header read, "Financial contributions, 2019 to 2024. It listed every rent check, every cash transfer, every credit card bill. Rent New Jersey, $3,000 monthly. Allowance Martha Miller, $3,000 monthly. Tuition, Harrington Academy, London, $4,000 monthly. Crypto wallet transfer, Kestrel Holdings." The numbers scrolled faster and faster, totaling up at the bottom in bold red text. Total misappropriated funds, $180,000. I looked at the crowd. They were not looking at the screen anymore. They were looking at Martha and George. The expressions in the room had shifted from shock to disgust. Mr. Sterling looked furious. My old broker looked horrified. The neighbors looked like they wanted to spit. I looked down at the front row. Martha had sunk into her chair, her face the color of old ash. She was shaking her head, muttering, "No, no, no," over and over again. George was trying to stand up, but his legs would not work. He looked like a trapped rat. Emily was standing by the wall, her hand over her mouth, staring at the screen where her brother was confessing to buying a corpse. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "David Miller is not dead," I said, my voice ringing out like a judgment. "He is a fraud. He is a thief. And the people sitting in the front row have been helping him spend my money for 5 years while telling you all that I was crazy." I pointed at Martha. "You wanted the insurance money, Martha. You wanted the $2 million. Well, here's the only thing David left you." I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The screen changed one last time. It showed a single document. A copy of the email Marcus had sent to the FBI that morning, attaching every piece of evidence we had just shown. Subject: federal wire fraud and desecration of human remains. I looked at George. "You said David would be rolling in his grave," I said. "You were wrong, but you are about to be in a cell." The doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. It was not waiters with more champagne. It was a dozen federal agents in windbreakers with NYPD officers flanking them. The party was over. The funeral had begun. The silence in the Pierre Hotel ballroom shattered like glass. One moment it was a vacuum of shock, and the next it was a cacophony of gasps and outraged whispers. 200 of New York's elite were staring at the screen and then turning their heads to look at the monsters in the front row. It was a wave of pure judgment crashing down on Martha and George Miller. Martha tried to stand up. Her legs were shaking so badly she collapsed back into her chair. She looked around the room, her eyes wide and pleading, searching for an ally, searching for anyone who would believe her over the high-definition evidence on the screen. But she found no one. Mr. Sterling turned his back on her. My old broker shook his head in disgust. Even the waiters looked at them with contempt. George was purple in the face. He was clawing at his tie, trying to loosen it, as if he were choking on his own lies. He looked at me standing on the stage, and I saw the realization hit him. He knew it was over. He knew the comfortable life I had subsidized was gone forever. Marcus stepped out from the control booth. He walked to the center of the room, his footsteps heavy and authoritative. He held a thick file in his hand. He did not need a microphone. His voice carried the weight of absolute truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, his eyes locked on his parents-in-law. "What you have just seen is not just a family tragedy. It is a federal crime. The documents on the screen, the confessions signed by David Miller, using an alias, the flight logs and the financial records of the money laundering have all been securely transmitted." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "At 9 o'clock this morning, I sent a complete digital package to the FBI field office in Manhattan. I also sent copies to the fraud division of Zurich Global Insurance and the New Jersey State Police." Martha let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. "You did not," she screamed. "You are family, Marcus. You cannot do this to family." "I did not do it," Marcus replied, his voice cold. You did it when you decided that stealing from a grieving widow was a career path. You did it when you helped your son desecrate a corpse just to cash a check. The doors to the ballroom did not just open, they burst inward. The federal agents who entered were not there for champagne. They moved with precise military efficiency. Their windbreakers bore the yellow letters FBI. They fanned out across the room, securing the exits, while a team of 4 marched directly down the center aisle toward the front row. The crowd parted for them. It was like watching the Red Sea part, but instead of Moses, it was justice walking through. Martha stood up screaming, "No, you cannot touch me." "Cannot. I am an old woman. I have high blood pressure." The lead agent, a tall woman with a face of stone, did not care about Martha blood pressure. She grabbed Martha's wrist and spun her around. "Martha Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and aiding and abetting a fugitive." The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. It cut through Martha's screams. It cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Click, click. George tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He stumbled toward the side exit, knocking over a chair, but a young officer blocked his path. George slumped against the wall, defeated. "George Miller, you are under arrest," the officer said, pulling George's arms behind his back. I watched from the stage. I watched as the people who had tormented me for 5 years were dragged out of the ballroom in disgrace. Martha was kicking and screaming, her expensive black dress twisting around her legs. George was weeping, his head hung low. They passed right by me. "Sarah, please," Martha begged as they dragged her past the stage. "Sarah, tell them it was a mistake. We are your family. We love you." I looked down at her. I looked at the woman who had asked for rent money while her son played tennis in London. "I have no family," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone one last time. "My husband died 5 years ago. You are just the people who stole his name." The doors closed behind them. The room was buzzing with energy. People were pulling out their phones, tweeting, texting, posting the scandal of the decade. But I was not done. The head of the snake was still slithering away. I walked off the stage and met Marcus by the exit. "Is he there?" I asked. Marcus checked his phone. The GPS tracker we had slipped into the lining of David's coat at the warehouse was pinging. "He is at JFK," Marcus said. "Terminal 4. He is trying to board the red-eye to London. He thinks he made it." I smiled. It was a smile that did not reach my eyes. "He has the fake money," I said. "He thinks he bought his freedom. He is about to find out the price was higher than he thought," Marcus replied. We did not go to the airport. We did not need to. The FBI agents who had coordinated the raid at the hotel had a second team already in position at JFK. I had given them everything, including the flight number David booked under the name Daniel Thorne, but I wanted him to know it was me. I wanted him to know who burned him. I pulled out my phone. I had one last message to send to the burner phone he was still carrying. At JFK, David was standing in the security line. I could imagine him tapping his foot, checking his Patek Philippe watch, sweating in his expensive trench coat. He was probably fantasizing about the champagne he would drink in first class. He was probably thinking about how easy it had been to fool me again. He would feel his phone buzz in his pocket. He would pull it out thinking it was a confirmation from his handlers or maybe a desperate text from his parents. I hit send. The message was a photo. It was a photo of Martha and George in handcuffs being shoved into the back of a police van outside the Pierre Hotel. And underneath the photo, I typed 5 words. Plan B failed. Look up. In my mind, I saw him read it. I saw the color drain from his face. I saw him look up from his phone just as 2 TSA agents stepped out of the line and pointed at him. I saw him turn to run just to see 4 federal agents blocking the concourse exit, their hands resting on their holsters. He was trapped. He was surrounded. And he was holding a phone that linked him directly to the crimes of his parents and a pocket full of fake crypto codes that were worth less than the paper they were printed on. But that was not the only surprise I had waiting for him. Marcus handed me his tablet. "She is online," he said. I looked at the screen. A video call was connecting. The pixelated image cleared to reveal a woman sitting in a sleek, modern living room in Kensington, London. She was beautiful, even with her eyes red from crying. She was holding a toddler on her lap. It was Elena, the woman from the park, the woman David had called his handler, the woman he claimed was just a cover. She was not a handler. She was his wife, and I had spent the last 24 hours telling her everything. "Hello, Sarah," Elena said, her British accent thick with emotion. "Is he in custody?" she asked. "He is being arrested right now," I said. "Good," Elena said. She looked down at the little girl in her lap, the girl who looked just like David. "I told the police here everything Elena said. They are freezing the accounts. They are seizing the flat. He will have nothing to come back to." "Thank you, Elena," I said. "I know this is hard." "He lied to both of us," she whispered. "He told me you were dead, Sarah. He told me you died in the crash and he survived. He told me he was running from the trauma, not the law. He told me you were a spy," I said. We both laughed, a dry, humorless sound. 2 women on opposite sides of the ocean bonded by the same lie. "He is going to call you," I told her. "When they give him his one phone call, he is going to call you. He is going to beg you to get him a lawyer." "I know," Elena said, "and I have a gift ready for him." She held up a piece of paper. It was a legal document stamped with the official seal of the High Court of Justice. "I filed for an annulment this morning," she said, "on the grounds of bigamy and fraud. By the time he lands in a cell, he will not just be a prisoner, he will be a single man." I nodded. "Goodbye, David Miller," I whispered to the empty air. I hung up the video call. I looked at Marcus. The ballroom was emptying out. The police lights were flashing outside, reflecting off the crystal chandeliers. "It is done," Marcus said. "Not yet," I said, smoothing down my dress. "There is one last thing." "Last?" What Marcus asked. I picked up my purse. "I have a house to sell," I said, "and I think I know exactly who wants to buy it." David sat in a federal holding cell at JFK Airport, watching his reflection in the 2-way mirror. He looked smaller without his trench coat. He looked like a man who was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. He knew about the fake crypto transfer. He knew about his parents' arrest. But he still had that arrogant tilt to his chin. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He was thinking about London. He was thinking about the penthouse in Kensington, the offshore accounts that I did not know about, and the woman who loved him enough to hide him. He thought that even if he went to prison for fraud, he would eventually get out and go back to his golden parachute. He was wrong. Because while Marcus was tracking the crypto wallet, I had been tracking the tuition payments. The money went to the Harrington Academy, but the emergency contact listed on the student file was not Daniel Thorne. It was a woman. Her name was Isadol Blackwood. When Marcus found that name, he went pale. He turned his computer screen toward me and showed me a Wikipedia page. Isadol Blackwood was not just a rich housewife living in London. She was the only daughter of Sir Richard Blackwood, the man who practically owned the shipping industry in the North Sea. She was British royalty in everything but title. She had access to billions. And David had played her for a fool. I had called her 2 days ago. It was the hardest phone call of my life. I expected her to hang up. I expected her to scream at me. Instead, she listened. She listened for 20 minutes of silence while I laid out the timeline, the flight logs, and the money transfers. And then she asked me one question. Did he tell you he was a widower? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. No, I said. He told me he was running from the mob. Isadol let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He told me his wife died in a plane crash, she said. He told me he was the sole survivor of a tragedy. He used your death, Sarah. He used your imaginary funeral to charm me. He cried on my shoulder about how much he missed you. He told me he needed someone to help him heal. The rage that filled me was white hot. He had not just killed himself in a fake crash. He had killed me too in his story. He had used my memory as currency to buy his way into a billionaire's bed. He has lived off me for 5 years, Isadol said, her voice hardening into diamond. My father bought the house in Kensington. My trust fund pays for the cars, the watches, the suits. He told me his assets were tied up in probate from your estate. We compared dates. We compared lies. And then Isadol Blackwood stopped crying. She was her father's daughter, and she knew how to close a deal. I want to see him, she said. When you trap him, Sarah, I want to be the one to close the door. And now, as David sat in that holding cell demanding his one phone call, he was walking right into the final blade of the guillotine. The federal agent handed him the phone. David dialed a number he knew by heart. I watched the feed from the security camera in the interrogation room. I saw his shoulders relax. He thought he was calling his savior. He thought he was calling the mother of his child, who would hire the best barristers in London to extradite him. The call connected. Elena, he said, his voice desperate and charming. It is Daniel. Something terrible has happened. There has been a misunderstanding with the American authorities. I need you to call your father legal team. There was a silence on the other end. Then the screen on the wall of the interrogation room flickered to life. The agents had set up a video link. It was not Elena. The woman on the screen was sitting in a boardroom that looked like it cost more than my entire apartment building. She was wearing a suit that looked like armor. Her eyes were dry and cold. "Hello, David," she said. David dropped the phone. It dangled by its cord, swinging against the metal wall. He stared at the screen. "Isadol," he whispered. "Do not call me that," she said. "You do not get to use my name. Not anymore." "Isadol, please listen." David stammered. "They are lying to you. This woman, Sarah, she is crazy. She is an ex-girlfriend who is obsessed with me." "Stop," Isadol said. She did not shout. She did not have to. The authority in her voice was absolute. "I have seen the autopsy report, David. I have seen the death certificate you forged, and I have spoken to Sarah." She held up a document. It was thick-bound in blue leather and stamped with the official seal of the High Court of Justice in London. "This is a Mareva injunction," Isadol said. "As of this morning, every asset you have in the United Kingdom is frozen. The penthouse is sealed. The cars are impounded. The accounts you opened under the name Daniel Thorne have been seized." David's face went gray. "You cannot do that," he gasped. "That is my money." "It is my money," Isadol corrected. "It was always my money. You never had a dime, David. You were a beggar in a $3,000 suit living off my inheritance and your dead wife's charity." She tossed the document onto the mahogany table in front of her. "And there is one more thing," she said. A man in a wig and gown stepped into the frame behind her. A barrister. "We have filed formal charges with the Crown Prosecution Service," the barrister said. "Bigamy is a serious offense in the United Kingdom, Mr. Miller. You married Ms. Blackwood while still legally married to Mrs. Sarah Miller in the United States. That renders your marriage to my client void ab initio. It also makes every penny you spent of her money a theft by deception." David slumped in his chair. The fight drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. "Isadol," he pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "Think of Sophie. Think of our daughter." Isadol's face did not soften. It turned into stone. "Sophie is a Blackwood," she said. "She is not a Thorne, and she is certainly not a Miller. She will never know you. I will make sure the only time she sees your face is in a mugshot." She leaned into the camera. "You wanted to be a widower, David? You wanted a tragedy. Well, congratulations. You have lost everything. You are alone." The screen went black. David sat in the silence of the interrogation room. He looked at his hands. The Patek Philippe watch was gone, taken by the agents as evidence. His suit was wrinkled. His expensive haircut was messy. He looked up at the mirror. He looked right at me, even though he could not see me. He knew. He knew I was there. He knew I had orchestrated every second of his destruction. I turned away from the glass. I did not need to see him cry. I did not need to see him beg. He was a ghost again. But this time, he was a ghost in a cage. And I was the one holding the key. I thought I had reached the bottom of the barrel when I found out about the fake death and the secret family. But Marcus had one more file to show me. It was the file that turned my sadness into a weapon of mass destruction. We were sitting in the conference room of the U.S. Attorney's Office while federal agents cataloged the evidence. Marcus slid a spreadsheet across the table. It was a forensic accounting of David purported gambling debts. 5 years ago, David had come to me weeping. He told me he owed $300,000 to a loan shark named Vinny. He said they were going to break his legs. He said they were going to come for me. That was why I sold our house. That was why I liquidated my 401k. I handed him a check to save his life. But there was no Vinny. Marcus pointed to a routing number on the spreadsheet. The account that received my life savings was not owned by a criminal organization. It was a joint account held at a credit union in New Jersey. The account holders were George and Martha Miller. I felt the blood drain from my face. The debt was a lie, a fabrication, a story invented by a son and his parents to strip me of my assets before he disappeared. They had staged a crisis to liquidate my net worth. The money I paid to save David did not go to the mob. It went to funding the startup costs of his new life in London. It paid for his fake passport. It paid for his first year of rent in Kensington. It paid for the down payment on the burner phone George used to terrorize me. They did not just help him hide Sarah. Marcus said, his voice trembling with rage. They helped him rob you. They stole your house. They stole your retirement. They stripped you naked financially and then asked you to pay rent on the house they bought with your stolen money. That was the moment the last ember of empathy died. I did not just want them in prison. I wanted them destitute. I wanted them to feel the crushing weight of poverty they had forced me to carry for 5 years. I filed a civil lawsuit the next morning. My lawyer Grace was ruthless. We sued for fraud, conversion, emotional distress, and unjust enrichment. We did not just go after the money they had left. We went after everything. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. When the judge saw the flow of funds from my savings account to their credit union and then to the crypto wallet in London, he looked at Martha and George with pure revulsion. Judgment for the plaintiff, the judge declared, slamming his gavel. He ordered the immediate seizure of all assets to pay restitution. And I mean all assets. The luxury bunker in the basement was raided by marshals. The vintage wines were auctioned off, the golf clubs, the designer handbags, the jewelry, it was all seized. But the sweetest victory was the house on Maple Street, the house I had paid rent on for 5 years. It turned out they had bought it outright with the money I gave David for his gambling debts. It was their asset, and now it was mine. The court ordered the property seized and transferred to me as partial repayment. Martha and George were evicted. I stood on the sidewalk and watched as the marshals escorted them out. They were not wearing their expensive clothes anymore. They were wearing sweatpants and carrying trash bags filled with their meager personal belongings. "Sarah, please," Martha wailed, reaching out to me. "We have nowhere to go. We are old. You cannot do this." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had gaslit me into believing I was insane. "You have Social Security." "Martha," I said, "it should be enough for a shared room in a state-run facility." "I hear the one in Trenton has vacancies." George spat at my feet. "You are the devil," he hissed. I smiled. "No, George, I am just the landlord. And your lease is up. I watched them get into a taxi paid for by the state. They were broken, they were penniless, and they were alone. They would spend the rest of their lives in a fluorescent-lit room eating cafeteria food, thinking about the millions they almost had. 6 months later, I sat in the back of a federal courtroom and watched the final act of the play. David stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit. The tan from his London life had faded, leaving him pale and gaunt. He looked older, smaller. The federal prosecutor did not go easy on him. The charges were a laundry list of felonies: wire fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, desecration of human remains, tax evasion. David tried to make a statement. He tried to cry. He tried to use that charm that had worked on me and Isidol and everyone else, but the judge was not charmed. The judge was looking at the victim impact statement filed by Isidol Blackwood, which detailed how he had used her fortune to fund a lie while married to another woman. David Miller, the judge, said, his voice booming, "Your actions were calculated, cruel, and devoid of human decency. You preyed on the women who loved you. You mocked the sanctity of life and death for personal gain." David looked back at the gallery. He looked for his parents, but they were not there. They could not afford the bus fare from the nursing home. He looked for Emily, but she was gone, having changed her name and moved west to escape the shame. He looked at me. I did not look away. I stared right into his eyes, and I let him see that I was not broken. "I sentence you to 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole," the judge stated. The gavel banged. The sound was final. 20 years. He would be 55 when he got out. His life was over. As the bailiffs led him away, he shouted my name. "Sarah, Sarah, please, I still love you." I stood up and walked out of the courtroom. The air outside was crisp and clean. It tasted like victory. Isidol was true to her word. Her lawyers worked with mine to repatriate the assets David had hidden in the UK, because the money he used to buy the Kensington apartment was technically stolen from me via the fake gambling debt, and from her via fraud we split the proceeds. It was a substantial sum, enough to pay off my debts, enough to buy back my old life. But I did not want my old life back. I wanted a new one. I returned to real estate, but not as an employee. I opened my own boutique agency specializing in high net worth properties with complex histories. My reputation had been restored. In fact, it had grown. The story of how I took down a transatlantic fraud ring made me a legend in New York. Clients trusted me because they knew I could spot a liar from a mile away. The final scene of my revenge played out on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my new corner office overlooking Central Park. The view was breathtaking. I was wearing a suit that cost more than Martha's entire wardrobe. On my desk sat a contract. It was the closing document for the sale of the house on Maple Street. I had stripped it down, renovated it, and sold it for a massive profit. I was signing the deed over to a nice young couple who had no idea about the monsters who used to live there. I signed my name with a flourish. Sarah Jenkins, not Miller. I had taken my maiden name back the day the divorce was finalized. My assistant buzzed in. "Sarah, you have a collect call from a federal correctional facility. Inmate David Miller. Do you want to accept?" I picked up my glass of wine, a vintage Bordeaux. I swirled the red liquid, watching it catch the light. I thought about David sitting in a concrete box, lining up for the phone, hoping for a savior. I thought about him realizing that no one was coming. Not Isidol, not his parents, not me. "Tell him I am in a meeting," I said, "and block the number." I hung up. I took a sip of the wine. It was rich and complex and perfect. I turned my chair to look out at the city. The sun was setting, painting the skyline in gold and purple. I was 33 years old. I was rich. I was successful. And for the first time in 5 years, I was completely and utterly free. The ghost was gone. The girl who loved him was gone. The woman who remained was unbreakable. The most profound lesson from Sarah's harrowing journey is that you must never set yourself on fire to keep others warm. For 5 years, Sarah lived in the shadow of a ghost, sacrificing her financial stability, her career, and her happiness to support a family that viewed her merely as a resource. She allowed her grief to become a prison, built on the false belief that loyalty requires enduring silence and financial abuse. This story teaches us that intuition is a powerful survival instinct, not a symptom of madness. When Sarah saw David in London, her in-laws tried to gaslight her into believing she was insane to protect their own greed. They used her empathy as a weapon against her. However, the moment she chose to trust her own eyes over their manipulative narrative, the power dynamic shifted instantly. Real strength is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate for the sake of family. It is measured by the courage to cut the cord when a relationship becomes parasitic. Furthermore, Sarah's calculated response demonstrates that true justice is not something you passively wait for. It is something you actively create. She didn't just scream into the void. She gathered the receipts, followed the money trail, and dismantled their lies with cold, hard facts. The ultimate victory wasn't just seeing David in handcuffs or his parents evicted. It was Sarah reclaiming her maiden name and her future. Your worth is never defined by your capacity to suffer for others. It is defined by your ability to stand up, walk away, and build a life that belongs entirely to you. If you have ever had to fight to reclaim your life from those who betrayed you, hit that subscribe button and share your story in the comments below.